Hi, I'm Hansi Oppenheimer. I'm the creator of the Squee Project, a collaborative arts community, and I'm an independent scholar in pop culture and fandom. And I brought some friends together to discuss the Supernatural finale and 2020 and the dumpster fire that was 2020. Lynn, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Dr. Lynn Zabernis. I'm a clinical psychologist and a professor at Westchester University, and my research area is fandom and fan psychology. So I've written 7, I think, books on fandom, a lot of them focusing on Supernatural, and the most recent book, which Tanya wrote a chapter in and Hansi contributed a photo for and has a pretty cover, is There'll Be Peace When You Are Done. My last 2 books were written with the actors and the fans of Supernatural. So they all did their own chapters about what the show meant to them.
Thank you, Vanna. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Vanna White. No, hi. My name is Dr. Tanya Cook, and I teach sociology. I'm a sociology professor at the Community College of Aurora near Denver, Colorado. And I also research fandom, but specifically fandom-based activism and charitable organizations. And thank you to Lynn that I can now say I wrote a book with Jensen Ackles. So.
That's right. You and me both.
Ebony, why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Hello, my name is Ebony Davis. I have just a bachelor's in psychology, but I've always considered myself to be an amateur pop culture analyst, just because I love reading books. I love reading articles about pop culture. This year I had a couple of pieces written for Sweatpants and Coffee, and also had a piece published in Conventional Wisdom, the book Conventional Wisdom.
Awesome. And Princess Vic, how about you?
Hi, I am Princess Vic of Jersey, although I am currently living in, where am I living? I'm currently living in Phoenix. I work as a high school English teacher, but I also work a lot of Comic-Cons. So when cons were a thing pre-COVID, I was on the con circuit. Every once in a while, I also write for Ghost Cult magazine. So there you go.
Yeah, well, in the con circuit, although the one thing about this is we do get to put together panels so much easier, rather than like I used to have to ask 20 people to get 4 people to show up. Now I ask 20 people and everybody wants to do it.
It's like, yes!
I don't have to go anywhere. I don't pay for a hotel. They don't have to travel.
Yep.
Okay, so why don't we start with our intellectual or rational side feelings for the end of the finale of Supernatural. Tanya, you want to go first?
Yes, I am rational. No, sure. And we had been chatting beforehand, so we're gonna go there and just sort of allude to that. But yeah, so my rational thoughts were it made sense to me as a finale. It did not surprise me. I had a sense, given the show, that we were going to have just the 2 brothers in the end and kind of be wrapping up their stories. So that made sense. There were a few, though, for me as a story consumer, viewer, interactor, as an audience person, I felt like there were a few plot holes in the finale itself that could have been concluded. It doesn't even necessarily matter how, to me. They just felt like they were open question marks a little bit, and I don't know that was due to COVID. All of that said, huge thank you and props to everyone who made those final episodes happen for us for fandom, whether we liked it or didn't. I think we need to say thanks to everybody for that too.
Ebony?
For me, my rational take is that I enjoyed it. It did what it was supposed to do as a finale, as far as wrapping up the series. Like you're saying, no real surprises, which is nice. I know finales sometime in general try to do little twists and turns and whatnot. So I appreciated that. And as someone who was kind of away for a while for 2 seasons, just dealing with life, to be able to come back and watch the finale and be able to understand it and not feel like I had to really like catch up to really be able to watch it felt really good. And I think it did what it set out to do, which is wrap up 15 years of story and kind of hit you in your feels on the way out.
Yeah, motherfuckers. Vic, how about you?
Rationally, I appreciate the work that went into it. I know shooting, especially when you're shooting on location currently in the age of COVID, cannot be an easy thing to deal with. And the end product, they made it look easy and seamless. With those final few episodes, you wouldn't necessarily realize the types of restrictions that they had to deal with having that many people on a set. So I am very, very pleased with the aesthetics of how it looked. Rationally, the writing, as Ebony said, didn't have a lot of twists and turns. If you had been watching for 15 years, you kind of had an idea of what could happen towards the end. I remember there was a line in an earlier episode where they talked about, you don't see many old hunters. That's just not a thing in the profession. And so for it to kind of hold true to that was very, very nice.
Man.
Yeah, I mean, I like the finale. It worked for me. I kind of agree with everything that Ebony said about the reasons why. I do think it was interesting that they did leave a lot open-ended, and I think that was intentional. I think that after 15 years, I mean, I've worked with these people, so I know them a little bit. I know how much they care about this show. And I think after 15 years, it's a tremendous amount of pressure to try to figure out how can we have an ending that is going to feel good to the people who've kept us on the air all this time, who we feel such a debt to. And I think part of the open-endedness, which lots of us are sort of writery kind of people or studying pop culture kind of people, and that can feel a little weird. Like, well, where's the tie up of this? Why is that loose end there? But I think a lot of that was very intentional, sort of wanting to leave it open-ended enough that people could make their own assumptions and sort of make the finale fit to however they needed it to be. I don't think that worked for everyone. I think for some people that was just frustrating, but I think the intention behind it was a really good intention. And I also think, I said this before when we were chatting beforehand, but I think it really worked as a realistic exploration of grief and loss. I said to Jared, like, that was like a master class in grief and loss, and he acted it so incredibly well. I'm teaching a graduate class in grief and loss in spring semester, and I'm going to use so much of that episode because I mean, part of me as I was watching, yeah, I mean, well, I was sobbing while I was watching it, but the other half of my brain was going, oh, this is going to be great for that class I'm teaching.
Can I just add, so what you're saying, Lynn, is they intentionally left some nails that they didn't pound in good enough. Some rebar, they left some, no.
Yeah, call it what it is, Tanya. That was not a nail. It was not a nail. It was like this long.
Yeah.
They left some rebar hanging out loose there so that
Too soon.
Yeah, too soon.
But Lynn, what you were saying about people not liking having stories that are open-ended, it's so true. But I think for me, being someone who reads a lot, and someone who writes, I like not having the answers to everything. I don't want, everything served to me on a silver platter. I want to be able to use my imagination because, yes, the writers for Supernatural have been wonderful fleshing out humans, but with any interaction, you see in the other person what you want to see.
Mhm.
So for the writers to leave so much open, it gives us the chance to find that how we would get that closure with that character ourselves without saying, no, this is the closure that you need. Here, swallow this. So I
Yeah.
appreciated that. I mean, yes, I did have questions, and I was able to, discuss them with another friend of mine who is a 15-year viewer. And I liked having that option.
Yeah, me too. Me
Yeah.
too.
I wish they would have left more open, actually. I didn't need to see, Dean die. I didn't need to see Sam get old. I mean, I didn't care, that they're in heaven. I feel like they felt the need to, they listened to Carry On too many fucking times. And they had to have peace when they were done, It just felt like, why? Why is it important that, like, you put a stamp on this and finalize it? Like, I don't understand why, they couldn't just be left driving off, That's
that would have been a more classic ending, like the 50s and 60s movies where your heroes drive off into the sunset.
Yeah, but I mean, I agree. I would have been happy with if it ended at 19, the penultimate episode, which did end with them driving off into the sunset, having defeated Chuck. Like that would have been an okay ending. I would have been, and it probably would have been a lot less upsetting for a lot of people. But I also would have been super shocked because I'm doing a rewatch now. Man, this is a dark, dark show. This was never a show about happy endings. It was never, it was never going to end that way. Kripke was going to end it totally tragically at the end of season 5. At least we got the addendum of happy in heaven. He wasn't even going to give that to us.
But I like the fact that they did show a fixed version of heaven, because of all the times that they had gone up to heaven, with Naomi, with, oh my God, the bobbies are loose. All the bobbies have escaped, with it being so walled off and everybody in their compartmentalized heaven, and all the angels and their gray suits and everything. To see a different version of heaven because Jack went up there and transformed it and changed it, I thought was nice. So you don't go away thinking, wow, Rowena has cleaned up hell nicely, but heaven is still in a state of disarray. So I appreciated that.
Once Jack became God, I mean, he said he was going to be hands off. So that was always my take on why Dean died, because God wasn't playing with them anymore. Like, now they're just people.
Yeah, I'll just chime in. I agree with heaven, and with that take on heaven, and I also agree that you could have ended at 19. And I actually thought, after watching 19, what are they going to do? And I got very worried because I saw where we were going.
So.
Yeah, I saw where we were going. And so if we're moving on to feels, I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm a rare, I liked some things, I didn't like some things about the finale. Emotionally, they nailed it. Pun intended.
Still too soon. Still too soon.
I am sorry about that. The only thing no, they were great. That scene was very emotional. I personally did not have a problem with. Well, of course, I was sad about Dean's death, and I cried. And I'm like, wow, I haven't cried at a TV show in a while. But
Since the last time I cried at Supernatural.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it made sense to me. Like, that made sense. Like, they kind of foreshadowed that forever. And even Sam's arc. What I found the least satisfying, and I didn't need this to be a specific way, but I wanted some kind of conclusion with respect to Cass's declaration. I wanted Dean to say something to react to that. It did not have to be romantic. It did not, I just wanted an acknowledgement of that. And I think that could have been accomplished very simply, even with COVID. And I also wanted Eileen to be Sam's wife. And that is not so much a shippy thing, but I just felt like making her a faceless woman and then having the original bad guy in the episode was ripping the tongues out of the mothers. As a feminist, this show has had its issues with its treatment of women since Mary Burnett was killing, and it has reckoned with a lot of these issues in a really positive way over the years. I think that's been a real part of the growth of the show and the audience and the interaction between the two. And we've talked about this in Lynn's book, actually. But it just that just felt like a a little bit of an FU to the somewhat critical female fan base at times, and this is prior, I'm talking pre-finale critical, like differentiating those two levels. Yeah.
I was with Lynn the night that they fridged Charlie. We're watching it together at her house, and like we just lost our minds. We're like, I can't believe you did that to Charlie. Like, of all characters, like to fridge her like that. Like, she's smarter than that. She would never go back to the motel. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that was egregious.
Yeah, that was a death I will never get over. It will like never make sense to me for what you said. It's like she just seemed too smart for the way she went out. That, I mean, just losing her alone because she's such a wonderful character, and then have to do it in a way that was so out of character.
You can tell they eventually obviously knew that was a mistake, because the whole point of, oh crap, we shouldn't have killed off Charlie and Bobby, we'll just bring them back in the AU, which of course nobody wanted that. That was not the same character. Like, who cares about AU versions? But it's interesting. I mean, I think eventually they did realize, oh, that was a mistake.
Well, and Eileen representing having had a similar, killing / fridging being brought back, and also representing the deaf community. That was just very frustrating to me that they just left her thread open. Like you assume Jack brought her back, but like also it was a little bit Avengers. Yeah, in the couple leading up to the finale, there was the Thanos snap, and then the reverse snap. I can't reverse snap.
Yeah.
Right. And I get that. Like that, I can go with that. Like that's cool. Like we can work within that. But I just felt like they built up so much between Sam and Eileen, and it would have been very simple to just have Sam signing to his son, or some reference. And that would have felt like, okay, we see fans, we see that character's important and that arc's important.
I kind of wish that I love the character of Eileen. Shoshana has a chapter in my book because I love the character of Eileen so much, and I love Shoshana so much. I hate that they brought her back as a manipulated love interest for Sam and reduced this kick-ass hunter who I adored to, oh, it's a woman, I guess it'll have to be a romantic interest. That's what I actually really hate. I don't like that. I don't like that they kept referencing Sam and Eileen dating off screen without hiring Shoshana and bringing her back and showing us Eileen. It's not the finale that bothers me. It's everything up until then. I'm okay with the open-ended, you don't know who Sam's with. I like what Jared said, that you don't know if that's a babysitter. You don't know if he got married. You don't even know his sexuality. You don't know what Sam is. They have never talked about it. So I kind of like that being part of the open-endedness, but I do have an issue with what they did with Eileen leading up to the finale.
They're not great with women, and I was really sorry that Holes, couldn't someone get a call from Jody or Donna, just audio, oh yeah, they're okay, glad, you take care of the girl, something
I think we're meant to assume that, but I mean, I think it's that open-endedness that we're talking about. They really did leave tons of things open, and I think if you can sort of get your head around to say, well, that's okay, Eileen's alive and she's out there being a kick-ass hunter, so I'm happy with that. And Jody and Donna are alive and they're out there doing their thing, and I'm happy about that. Then you're okay. But I think that for a lot of people, they were like, no, I just needed one word. I just needed to hear it. I don't feel that way. I can make my assumption, but I do understand a lot of people wish that they had just written that one sentence in.
Yeah, just something that okay. I mean, I don't know. It seemed really rushed to me. So whenever like filmmakers depend on montages, it means they don't have enough footage.
Yeah.
So there were a whole bunch of montages the last couple episodes. And I just like, I know they meant to do the best they could, but they could have been better. That's my
Do you think that
assessment.
Go ahead, Ebony.
Do you think the biggest, at least the one that I've seen the most, do you think the biggest sticking point in the fandom and the main reason why they didn't like the finale was kind of leaving it open, that sort of openness between Cass and Dean, and not having that response? Because just kind of looking at Twitter and what my friends are kind of going back and forth about is, well, there was no response from Dean. We kind of just had this big emotional pour out from Castiel about his feelings, and then kind of just left it there. And I know that there was a lot of talk about, oh, well, the whole thing about like kill your gays, but you know, Misha was saying, well, he is alive. They did mention him. Jack did go back and get him out of the empty to fix heaven, you know, but to me that feels like that's the big criticism. I mean, some people talk about like how Dean died and, you know, maybe sort of that open-endedness, but to me that seemed like that's the big thing that everyone is kind of grabbed onto as to why they don't like the finale.
I mean, I think a lot of people were really genuinely disappointed. I mean, I know a lot of people who genuinely thought that end game of Supernatural was Dean and Cass riding off into the sunset together, and that's what they were expecting. And that's a really hard pill to swallow when not only do you not get that, but you don't really even get a lot of resolution. So I think that's absolutely the big sticking point. Yeah.
But it's weird that they would think that. I mean, having watched 15 seasons of it, Dean doesn't ride off into the sunset happily with anyone.
I
He
agree.
never did. From every time he died or every time Sam died, Dean never was set up for a happily ever after. Even that time that he had spent with Lisa, you just knew the other foot was going to drop, you know. So to think that somehow magically Dean was going to completely change character and go off happy with Cass, for me, it's like, well, you haven't really been paying attention to 15 years of Supernatural. But that's just how I thought. It's like, yeah.
I think
you lost all your video. So did everyone's video disappear?
What? Uh-oh.
When you lose your moderator in the middle of a panel.
It says we're recording. We can keep talking. We'll be all right.
Yeah, editing is a wonderful thing.
I was just gonna say, you know, I think that
just threw me out.
What?
Closed off. It just threw me out, and then everyone's video was off. So.
Oh, wow.
Well, that's weird. Okay. Well, we're here, and we're still going. And if we miss a part, we'll just make a montage. We'll just have a montage.
Montage.
And then I'll change my hair to show that time has passed.
Yeah, and I'll go put on the aging makeup. It'll be great.
I'll take off my glasses.
Right. And I'll have gray at my temples to show that Anyway, so I was gonna chime in on that. I absolutely think that so my friends were quite divided. Like I had some friends who thought the finale was great and they liked it, it made sense. And I had friends who were very, very disappointed. And there's a very thoughtful opinion piece on BuzzFeed by someone called, I think Deirdre was the username, called something about the trauma of silence, that explained, I'm not saying I agree 100% with this personally, but I read it, and to me it explained a lot of the perspective of why fans thought that they were sort of teased with the declaration with Cass, and then the minute Cass like revealed his feelings, he's killed, and how that was traumatic and silencing and frustrating for some folks from that perspective. So again, that's not necessarily my personal take, but I thought that op-ed, if folks want to search it on BuzzFeed, was quite thoughtful about the way that was expressed. So if people are interested in learning more in a way that isn't like having a toxic argument back and forth, I thought that was well said. Yeah.
I don't know if I agree with you about it is
Okay.
BuzzFeed.
Yeah,
but I read it also. I don't recommend it, but I do understand what you're saying though. And I do think, I mean, it was confusing. I think it was confusing to anyone to see episode 18 and then have it seemingly going in, oh, this is something brand new. To me, that like came out of nowhere. I was like, oh my gosh, where are we really, Cass? You felt, oh my gosh, and then it didn't get picked up. And I do think that's valid, that people were like, well, wait a minute. Like, especially if you were shipping that for a long time, there was this sort of instance of euphoria that was very quickly followed by, oh, yay, oh, shit. And then kind of nothing. And I think that that's a hard place to be. I do have a lot of empathy for people who were really sort of upset about that. That was a very weird progression. Supernatural's written by a lot of people, and not all the writers are writing the same story. And I think to an audience, that is really jarring sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I read his declaration of love as ace, because I just, angels seem ace to me, because
Yeah, that's how I see him too. Yeah.
so I don't really see him having sexual feelings for Dean. I just see him loving Dean.
Yeah.
But I know other people, ship them heartily.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, I'm rather agnostic about ships in general. And there was things, just to be clear, in that article I did not agree with, if I didn't say that. I just think it did, for people who, as Lynn was saying, for people who did read it as a canonical declaration of romantic love, it felt unconcluded. Even if Dean had said, I love you too, as a brother, as a family member. I mean, he's
before,
yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was I mean, the last 3 episodes, you could talk about the last 3 episodes for 600 years because they made it so complex at the end. I mean, I agree with what Ebony said. Eventually, in the end, it kind of ended in a way that was not a twist and was not a like, oh my God, they ended it with the brothers. Oh my God, like there's nobody who probably would say that. But the way they got there in the last 3 episodes was like,
yeah, well, that I blame on, COVID and no more writer's room and people working from home remote. And so I think they lost a lot of momentum, in that period when they couldn't work together, when everyone was trying to figure shit out. And so when people go off and start doing their own stuff and then have to come back together and wrap this up, you lose some of the continuity or I was really angry when I saw it, and my first response was "fuck you." I always respond to pain with anger first, so that's a personal issue.
Yeah.
I think my first response was when the beginning of that episode where they're showing like slice of life Dean and kind of being cute, and I was like, oh shit. It's about, you don't get to see that fun stuff unless Dean is coming, like.
You were so right. I loved that montage. When that montage started happening, I started screaming, oh my God, it's Robbie Thompson's day in the life episode that he wanted to do his whole life. I wanted it to be about
Right.
83 hours long. Just let me watch the Winchesters making toast and ironing shirts and kicking the washer. Like,
happy with that. Go on in the Men of Letters bunker, and life is normal. I don't see why they had to wrap it up.
because it's supernatural.
Well, I don't understand why it has to be a finale. Why can't you just? One of my best favorite finales for shows are sort of where they just kind of leave it in a good place. Like Ash vs. Evil Dead. Like, it was kind of perfect because the last episode he ends up like in like dystopia world, which is kind of sort of from Army of Darkness. So it was a perfect ending, and then they got canceled. So it ended up being like this great. It would have been great to see that season, but it was good as a finale because it's like a whole new story.
I have to say, if they had known that this show was going to be ending in the middle of a pandemic, I do wonder if maybe they wouldn't have changed their minds about making it so dark, because I think if we hadn't been in a pandemic, it would have been a lot easier for people to take. Because
I know. Well, that's why too. This whole this panel is sort of like about 2020. It's just like it's like, of course you rendered it that way.
Yeah.
Everything sucked.
I think
it was.
No, you could. I
Yeah,
was gonna say, I think I did enjoy watching the episode, and the emotional moments for real. No, jokes aside, in the last three were what has kept the show on the air for 15 years, what has been so special and so motivating for the fans and fandom. But finishing the episode, my first thought was, oh boy, this is going to be hard. It's going to be really hard.
Tanya, I'm sure you and I were both sitting there in the same, like, oh no.
Oh shit.
Oh.
Yep.
I thought it was interesting that with the first episode, Dean's the one that's out on the hunt, waiting for his dad who's hunting, and Sam's the one in college. So it's almost was like with the last episode that it kind of dovetailed back to that Dean dying on a hunt, and then Sam kind of picking up from where he was 15 years ago, and continuing on with his life, but kind of older and wiser. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, I like that they made an attempt to do some full circle kind of things. I really appreciate it. I mean, I know from talking to them how much all three of them really, really cared about these last three episodes. Misha for 18 and Jared and Jensen for 20. They cared so, so, so much. And I love the little things, like Jared added in the finale that they were going to be wearing the clothes that they were wearing in, when Dean came to pick up Sam from Stanford, down to what kind of actors care about that shit after 15 years? What? And they changed some of the dialogue to make it recall things that they had said to each other over the years. Actors don't even remember their dialogue for 15 years, let alone say, hey, director, we're putting this back in. The fans will, I mean, I was left with, no matter what you think about the content of the finale, end of 18, everybody likes 19, so I just keep leaving it out. No matter what you think about the content of those two episodes, I feel so incredibly grateful that Jared, Jensen, and Misha cared so much about that show, and it's so
Jim
obvious to me. Jim Beaver too, and Bob Singer, who's been there from the beginning, but especially those actors, that was so much more to them than just a job, and I feel so lucky to have had people who cared about it so much for so long. That's the main feel that I think I took out of it.
I think we've built this family in the fandom, after 15 years. I mean, it's always been a tumultuous fandom. But we've also done some great work together, activism, and there's a Christmas gish now. Like I already did 3 gishes this year. I'm like,
I know, I've done
exhausted.
2. I can't, I just, I was
Yeah.
like, I can't do another. I can't do another.
I can't decide if more gishes is good or just punishment from 2020. Like I'm at the point where I'm like, I love it and it's awesome, but I'm so tired, guys.
Yeah,
I'm so
I
tired.
can't do it. I'm too tired. So it's been really hard to watch how ugly it's been. Like I like to think of like this feels so good. Like here's 5 women. We're all fans of the show. We all saw the finale in a completely different way. Some loved it, some hated it, some were in between. So what? We all love and respect each other as women, as fans of the show. Like this is what SPN family usually feels like to me. And that's not what it seemed like for the past month, which is really sad to